Welcome back to another Clone or Die. And today I am joined by perhaps the most reliable shotgun ever made, the Mossberg 590A1. You, right there! I just want to say, thank you for taking a break from your Battlefield 6 time to watch this video. Now, the Mossberg 590 has a bit of an interesting history. Originally starting out was a modification of the Mossberg 500 series of shotguns. The military used a lot of different pump action shotguns. They've used Stevens, Remingtons, Winchesters, the list goes on. They were all over the place, and Mossberg is definitely up there with probably the best one, if I'm being honest. The Mossberg 500 was originally submitted for military acceptance, and it was pretty good. They liked it a lot, but there was a few things they wanted changed for what ultimately became the 590. Now, this happened in 1987 is when the original 590 was adopted. And there was a few things they wanted different from the standard Mossberg 500. They wanted the safety up here to be metal. They wanted the trigger group housing to be metal instead of plastic. Those are both plastic components. They wanted a bit of a different end cap. That's how you can always tell the difference between a 590 and a 590A1. This works a little bit differently. You can tell from the end cap right here, and you can easily take the barrel off and the magazine tube off. Makes it a little bit easier for cleaning than your standard Mossberg 500. Now, for specifically the 590A1, that came a few years later in 1990. They wanted a couple updates to the gun. One of the big things would be the heavy barrel. The Navy specifically requested having this thicker, heavy barrel in case it gets jammed in a door in a ship. I don't think that would ever really happen, but you know, whatever. And they also wanted this bayonet lug put on the shotgun because goddamn, the military and their shotguns, they love bayonet lugs, regardless of it being basically useless. They want to be able to put a knife on the end of a shotgun because fuck it, why not? Imagine having to jerk off your gun. Ironically, despite the bayonet lug being something that the military specifically wanted, the overwhelming majority of 590s and 590A1s you see in military service do not have the bayonet lug. So they wanted it, it got put on, and then the majority that are bought lack this feature. I don't know. Now for this specific version, this is one of the more popular versions that Mossberg sells on the civilian market. The majority of ones on the civilian market, you're gonna see with ghost ring sights. Now mine has the Picatinny rail and the added on ghost. You might just have a ring sight here and then your front sight up here. In the military, I've never actually seen a single photo, and I looked pretty hard, of the ghost ring sights in use. I have been told they were used, but I can't find a specific reference. Overwhelmingly, I see the bead sight, which is pretty standard for shotguns. This one also has a ported barrel, so it helps tame the recoil a little bit on a pump action shotgun. This definitely hits harder than something like the Benelli M4 M1014 shotgun. That is a much softer recoiling 12 gauge than this is, especially when you're shooting full power buckshot or even 3-inch Magnum shots if you're brave enough. What makes this shotgun so durable and so reliable, other than being pump action? A lot of people associate pump action revolvers and bolt actions with reliable. They can jam too, or they can be unreliable if they're made poorly. This was the only shotgun, the 590A1, to pass the military's 3,000 round burn down test. And 3,000 rounds for a shotgun is absolutely insane. The overwhelming majority of shotguns would never be able to reach that number in like one sitting without cleaning the gun. TFB TV, James Reeves, does a thing where he takes like shitty Turkish shotguns, and most of them don't even last 200 shells before they break. So that's a good indicator if this can go 3,000 rounds without a single part breakage. This is a goddamn reliable shotgun. I don't even think an 870 can go that many. The 870 is often compared with the 590 as like the two premier guns. Granted, there are different levels of 870. There are cheaper ones, there are more expensive ones, different components. That's a comparison that a lot of people make. Honestly, I like the 590 better. I like the features that it does have as opposed to the 870. The big one, your safety is right here on top. Very easy to actuate on and off. Super, super convenient. Plus, you can see it while you're aiming the gun. I can see my safety right there to see if it's on or off. Mossberg, or the Remington, has a push button down here, which you cannot see. The lever to unlock the Shotgun pump, if you are cocked, is right here behind the trigger guard. Very convenient, very easy to reach. On the Remington, it is in front of the trigger guard, so you kind of have to reach forward to hit it to unlock and be able to rack the shotgun or unload it or whatever that you need to do. So those are two features that the Mossberg has that I like a lot compared to the Remington. Now, before I forget mid-video, the other thing that I love about the Mossberg, and this is probably my favorite feature, is that the loading gate, the lifter, comes down when you rack the shotgun. So it's totally clear for you to load shells very easily. You don't have to fight any sort of lifting gate or loader or anything like that. You can just clearly put shells in. Honestly, this shotgun, even though it's not cut for it, is even easy to do doubles or quads if you want to. Not that those things are ever trained in the military or police, and they never would be. They're impractical for that application. Too easy to lose shells. You don't have the right kind of pouches. But this is something I love. This is a problem I have even with the Benellis, where the lifter, the shell lifter sticks out and it kind of gets in your way when you're putting shells in. It can catch your gloves. This just non-existent, super easy. Just put a shell in there, bam, in, and you're ready to go. Now, I feel like shotguns are very heavily associated with the Marine Corps, but all branches did adopt the 590. All branches do use shotguns. It's not something that is Marine Corps specific. Now, as far as pump action shotguns go, it's probably more either in the breaching role or the military police role, where pump actions might be more important for switching rounds, which is very easy to do if you're going to non-lethal or something like that. Crowd control, riot control. Being a Marine outside an embassy, having a pump action shotgun is probably not too uncommon. I consulted with a few friends of mine on this that were Marines in the post-2010 era, GWAT era with combat deployments. And one of my buddies, he was a regular infantry Marine. He's like, yeah, we trained on the 590, but we never had them. We had Benelli M4s. So that's what we utilized for close quarters and breaching. And then he said they didn't even use them that much because his deployments were in Afghanistan. I had another friend who was also regular infantry, but he was in a more specialized unit where they had more training on things like pump action shotguns. He wasn't recon, but his unit did have like MP5s, for example. And he told me in his entire experience, he never saw a Mossberg 598 even remotely. They just had Mossberg 500s. So even though this was specifically created out of that, it doesn't mean the military doesn't use Mossberg 500s. Even throughout the GWAT, the Mossberg 500, the Benelli M2, the Benelli M4, and the Remington 870 have all been used extensively. Now, Mossberg also does sell this in a retro configuration where it's like wood and it has a heat shield. That was never actually used by the military, but it does look pretty cool. I'll admit, it looks pretty badass. I would probably buy one of those if I didn't already have this one. This particular one is the 20-inch barrel. I didn't mention that before, and it has an 8-round tube. Now, typically the ones you're gonna see in the military use is they're gonna be the 18-inch barrel and they're gonna have the 6-round tube. So that's the usual of what you're gonna see. Still, I'm looking for a photo of this configure of even a 20-inch barrel and an 8-round tube. I haven't seen. I have seen some photos of them with wood stocks, but the overwhelming majority are using the synthetic stocks. That might have been a guy that put it on or something because he liked it. And I can understand the recoil impulse off a wood stock shotgun versus a synthetic stock shotgun definitely does feel different. Different enough for somebody to prefer one or the other. That's 100% understandable. It's also not too uncommon to see these little shell holders on the side. A little bit inconvenient to hold shotgun shells naturally. Of course, we do have the Velcro method for just putting it in your M4 mag pouch, ripping out a new placard, slapping it on the side. Not every unit does that though. There are different SOPs. So you could simply do something easy like this, stick some shotgun shells in the molly loops, bam, that was pretty common. You see that early GWAT. There are some shotgun shell pouches. Eagle has made them. There was an Alice Gear one that's pretty uncommon. They're not super great, to be honest with you, as far as holding and reloading out of. That's always the number one challenge with shotguns is reloading them. The good benefit is you can reload, you can fire a couple shells and then throw 2 in real quickly and you don't have to go through an entire reload like with a conventional rifle. But just something to be aware of. I'm also going to notate, due to the design of the Mossberg, it is a slightly harder to rack than a Remington 870 would be. So you can't do like a Sarah Connor rack like you can with an 870. It's just a little bit harder to unlock. It's still relatively easy to pump, but not as easy as the 870. You know, a small thing, but worth noting. something I touched on a little bit in the Benelli video, and I'm going to harp on it again today. Probably not important if you're an embassy guard or a military police or a riot control or something like that. The shotgun will be your primary weapon. You'll just be carrying that. But if you're in combat and you're breaching, it's typically what you would carry a shotgun for. Although there are individuals from like Fallujah and Ramadi that have been noted to carry shotguns as their primary weapons just due to the nature of the fighting they were doing. But typically, again, I'm going to harp on it, if you are carrying a shotgun in combat, you also have to carry your rifle. So it's just more shit to carry. You got to carry 2 guns, which is heavy, and you have to carry ammunition for 2 guns. So there's a weight consideration there. Granted, it's very dependent on what your role is, but it's just something to keep in mind. And that's kind of it for the Mossberg 590A1, perhaps the most reliable pump-action shotgun ever made. I would certainly stack it up against any other pump-action shotgun, and I still really don't think any shotgun can compare to the 590. That was it for today's 12-gauge themed video. I'll see you in the next one.